ethnography, however you want to pronounce it, whatever. All right, so let's get into this. What's up, everybody? We're gonna deal with a little bit of here. This here is just about ethnic groups. If you notice, when we're talking about ethnic groups, it's always some non-white person. You ever notice that? Ethnic groups. Oh, ethnic minorities, ethnic this, ethnic that. I mean, it's usually always kind of subjected to non-whites. So I don't know if a lot of people notice that, but that's just an observation of mine. It's an opinion. I get some of that from the fact that Mr. Cox, shoot, I forgot his first name. The guy who wrote White America's Problem, the color problem. He basically said that ethnography is not for his people, it's for everyone else. And what they're doing is they're trying to understand your culture, your ways, your methods. And your culture is the results, the natural results of a group of people, uh, the way that they dealt with the pressures that was on their community over time. And then they develop certain habits from those pressures, and they develop certain rituals from those pressures, certain foods, certain music, songs, uh, all of that. And then they develop a culture. And what this science is that white people created, ethnography is a means to report to who? Graphically and in writing the culture of a certain people. A qualitative research method which was initially associated with anthropological research and aims to study cultural phenomena. So they're trying to study man, people, and they want to study the culture of the people. What are their habits? What are their ways? What do they do? Ethnography has since been adopted by many other fields, including sociology, the way that your social systems happen, and then psychology, and even the business world. And we know that business is another word for warfare because you're making money. Business determines who gets to control resources. So, ethnography as market research is becoming more and more widely used. Ethnographic research has an extremely wide scope, right? So whenever there's culture, there can be ethnography. Ethnography. So, why is that important? We need to know that. And why do we need to know that? It's because if you're in a situation where uh, someone hates you, but it's too many of y'all to kill straight out, you know, they need to know, they need to have intel on you. And how do they do that? One of the things that, and this is the way that they do that, they study other cultures. Now, we study them because we live here, Black America. Black Americans, we tend to study, especially the American white people. And Black Americans, we're very interested in other cultures. We actually are very interested, we're very curious about African cultures, the various tribes. We're curious about Native American cultures. We're curious about Chinese, white, uh, you know, Indian, all of these different cultures. We are actually the Black American people are very curious about the cultures of other groups. But from what I'm noticing, I don't see other groups besides white people and maybe the Jewish people. They're not so seriously curious about the culture of, I mean, really investigating the culture and what the histories of other groups. And the reason why these people, see, because they have a nefarious agenda. And let me show this before. And everybody click the thumbs up. Click the thumbs up for me. Come on, guys, click the thumbs up. Give me that thumbs up, guys. All right. And go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to show a few videos in here. So I want it to be clear that everything is, I'm showing this for the purpose of educational and personal use tips. And so this is fair use. So if you can read, there you go. Copyright disclaimer: under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use. Fair use. All right. So I'm going to show a couple of videos, but it's just for fair use, guys. Don't get mad at me. All right, so, and this is what we're going through, another episode of Dr. Wesley Muhammad's Waging War by Zip Code. Keep in mind, even though we are very comfortable in this war, this is a war you got TVs, you're looking at, you know, looking at everything, it seems normal, but you're actually in a war. But the weapon is not always guns. Of course, we see now today that it is guns, but it's not always guns. Sometimes that weapon is food. The weapon is food. Let's look at this one. These are the native, this is just a meme that I thought was interesting from Native American. White men tell the children that their ancestors settled here. See, language is very important. When the truth is that they invaded. You see, so the language, settled versus invaded. So confusion by language, because we speaking their language, meaning they can define and redefine terminology, and that's what's confusing us. So let's get that kind of cleared up. And this is the great Dr. Wesley Muhammad, the brother who created this study for us to go over this very deceptive form of warfare. It's your food, the food that they, you know, scientifically designed for us. That they set up the social programs, the women, infants, and children's programs, even programs by your zip code, the ingredients in these foods. The foods that you love them so much it doesn't matter what someone says, you're still going to eat that food because we have an addiction to the food. But with this information, you can begin to train yourself off of some of these addictions. And this is what the reason why they started poisoning your food. This is when they do these mice. Remember we talked about epigenetics before. Epigenetics. These two mice have the same genetic code. They are twins actually. They are genetic twins, but they have a different expression of that genome. So they are not epigenetic twins. And this big fat mouse is sicker. It got more disease. It has gallstones. It has colon problems. It has cancer. It has all kinds of stuff. It gets surgeries. You see, and these are the things that black people are dealing with. And it dies young. And this small mouse lives a very long time. And they know what they're doing. And this is science, guys. So this is what we got to know. Let's get into it. Keep in mind, I want to show this video. So just hold on a second. Like I said, click the thumbs up. Click the thumbs up. Do that for me. You can do that for me, can you?
But games easily get out of hand. Oops. His look says it all.
Alright, so we wanted to show that. Why? Why are we showing that? We want to notice this is their scientists. What they're doing. Number one, the male was the protector. They sent in a spy. They mimic the they mimic the group. And it's not the same. They knew something was wrong with it. So they can tell something's different about it. But is it dangerous? The man checks it out. Once they get past the barriers, which is the parents, which is the barriers, once they can get past these barriers, usually it's the man or the male mindset. And then everybody can relax, right? And then they begin to mimic the behaviors of the population of the ethnic group, and then they can study, and it allows them to, you know, to insert and change things, because once you understand something, then you can control it. So let's look at this here. What's happening here? Now I want y'all to black people to understand something. That's the exact same technique. It is just altered. They mimic. All this man is doing here is mimicking the black people. And if you look at how they're focusing the camera on him, he's leading them. The females are right behind him. The men are following him. And this white guy. What does this allow them to do? The black folks are very accepting of these folks. Let's look at something else. That's the African dance. Now this allows them to capitalize off of these things. They can investigate everything of value in this culture. They can kill these people with poison. They can steal these cultural, it's called cultural appropriation. They can steal this and capitalize off of it, and without these people even understanding what they have. This is what we're dealing with here, and these are tactics, and so we need to just look at that. This is going to tie into the food here in a minute. Let's look at something else. What's this?
Kick that shit, baby. Come on. Come on. Watch that nigga kick this shit. Alright, look. Yo. Your style is generic. Mine's authentic made. I roll like a renegade. Uniclinic aid. My technique's bizarre and ill. I scar and kill. You were a star until I serve you like a bar and grill. Cause I proceed to cook and grill you. That's all it took to kill you. You better recognize me like I look familiar. You want a battle? You beat around the bush like you're scared to live.
All right, so same thing. It's Eminem. Black America should be very familiar with cultural appropriation, because when these folks come in and they're studying you, they're not studying you. They send one in there that may be a nice guy, but the rest of them, they find an inroad, and now they can use that one. They can use that one and take over your whole system. This is why rock and roll did not even seem. I know when I was growing up, from rock and roll, I thought that was white people's music. They stole that music. How did that happen? Elvis. Today, that's what they're doing with him, Eminem. But what else do they use this our ethnic cultural ways to do? See, rap came out of our oppression, and it's just our situation in the neighborhoods of Black America, more precisely Brooklyn and New York. But it's spread around the world. But what they want to do is they want to take that music and not make it black music. They want this music to be everybody music, and when they say everybody, that means they want to take it over, right? So what else can that do? They can use this to find out your eating habits. What is your ways? What do you like to eat? And before you know it, you're ending up sick. They can create barriers in your neighborhood. They like this movie is talking about 8 Mile Road. That is a imaginary barrier that was defended by police in the city of Detroit. You couldn't cross 8 Mile Road, otherwise you would get harassed immediately. They would camp out all night waiting at some of the intersections, and if they seen anybody black past that 8 Mile Road, they would just harass you, whether you were doing something illegal or not. So these are walls, and they get this from their history, but that's a whole nother story. But so let's get into the actual report. Let's get into the report now. So it says life and death in white and black. Oh, hold on a second here. You guys can't see this. Life and death in white and black. A recent report from CityLab is revealing life expectancy is associated with segregation in U.S. cities. It was found that in these cities with the clearest lines of segregation, and if segregation is not self-separation, this is something that someone else has determined these group of people live, right? Life expectancy shows the greatest gap between the segregated communities, a difference that can equal 20 to 30 years of your life. For example, in Chicago, which ranked just below Milwaukee and New York in the 2013-2017 segregation index with a score of 75.3, which is a scale between 0 and 100. 0 means complete integration, 100 is complete segregation. So in Chicago, there's a 30-year life expectancy gap between whites on the north side and African Americans on the south and west sides. A 30 years. So if you black and you live on the south and west side, you're going to die at 60, they're going to die at 90. So that's a lot of life, right? This means that on the north sides, whites live on average 30 years longer than south and west side African Americans. That's in the same city. In segregated San Francisco, there's a 25-year gap between segregated black and self-separated white populations. This is in contrast to San Jose, California. And we know that there's only like 2.8% black people in San Jose. But this is a contrast to San Jose, California, said to be the most integrated metropolitan region in the Bay Area, where they don't see the same stark colored divisions in terms of life expectancy gap. Because even in the worst off neighborhoods of San Jose, the average lifespan is nearly 80 years old. This is because the magnitude of the racial ethnic segregation leads to the life expectancy gap. There is a cloud of living that hovers over white communities and over integrated communities like San Jose, from which even poor people benefit. A Harvard analysis found that residents of rich neighborhoods live on average 15 years longer than residents of poor neighborhoods, and that even lower income residents of wealthy neighborhoods live longer than others in poorer ones. That is because with the spatial determination, that is because with this spatial determinism that characterizes American society, the determining factor is race first, socioeconomic status second. While there are some very poor white neighborhoods in Appalachia and some old Rust Belt cities, 75% of poor whites in the United States live in predominantly middle income neighborhoods. And so they're giving you this let's look at this here, and I got this picture here. So basically, if we look at this here, right in Chicago. So on the south side, you're expected to live, these are the black neighborhoods here, you're expected to live 60 years, 60 to 68 years. These pink neighborhoods, these people is estimated to live 90 years. So let's look at that. See all the dark towards the south side and on some of this west side, and then you go up, as you go up towards the north, Milwaukee and Chicago. Those folks live longer, right in the same city. And then in San Jose, everybody's pretty much living pretty good. And this is just in the same country, but these are different cities. Okay, they just handle policy different. And then we can look at this one, and they show you the city on here, and everything is in the link anyway. So they'll show you all the different cities that they have data on and the various life expectancy in those cities ranging. Life expectancy gaps. So let's go back to our desktop. So in America, whites have scientifically ensured that clouds of living hover over their separated communities, even if they permit others within it, and clouds of death hover over segregated black communities, with the poorest of the whites who lived there as acceptable casualties of war. So basically, even the white people who live in black neighborhoods, they die the same rate as we do. So they're just dead. Segregation is so embedded in the nation's fabric because it serves whites not only a social purpose, but also a scientific purpose. Segregation creates localized geographic areas that can be targeted. Segregation provides concentrated blackness. When I use the language clouds of death, this is Dr. Wesley, I am being quite literal. The concentration of black and brown people in segregated areas and the self-separation of white people from the areas allow for the easy and efficient targeting of black people with chemical poisoning of the air, food, and water, while hermetically sealing affluent, white, and integrated communities off from the poisons and the consequences of the poisons. Thus, the life expectancy gap between black and white people. So then he goes into clouds of death. If one seeks evidence that black zip codes have been scientifically targeted, we need go no further than the example of air breathed in by the residents of segregated black neighborhoods. And if the air is weaponized, how about the food? As Scientific American reports in 2012, tiny particles of air pollution contain more hazardous ingredients in non-white and low-income communities than in affluent white ones. A new study shows the greater the concentration of Hispanics, Asians, African Americans, or other or poor residents in an area, the more likely that potentially dangerous compounds such as vanadium, nitrates, and zinc are in the mix of fine particles they breathe. So that's pretty much it that I'm gonna read this week from that. But what I want to know is, yeah, people put your questions down here, put your ideas as far as what you're thinking about here. And what I want to know, what I also want to know, want to say something to this is when we're talking about sealing off areas, we're talking about Trump and his wall down there in. He wants to create walls. The Roman had walls, and we even see the Great Wall of China. Well, we know also that these folks have a history, and they have a hidden history of walls because they were sealed off in Europe. They were sealed off in Europe. And this is, if you look up the walls of Caucasia, you'll see how the ancient peoples sealed these folks off. They sealed them off because these were what they call devs or devils or divas. Okay, and then they were also called thugs. This is what they wear. They put on animal skins, hats like this, and they killed people, robbed people, and destroyed civilized areas. This is what they do. These are the same people. They have festivals like this. They have festivals during this time that affect us. And so they're pretty much kind of, this is their culture. They're replaying their culture. This is the original ghetto. You know, if you go in the walls of walls of Caucasia, these were literal walls that the ancient advanced peoples, which are black peoples, which are non-white folks, we sealed these things off and put guards there on the Caucasus mountain range, which is 666 miles from the first gate to the last gate. You can look that up. But yeah, we did this to keep them out. They begin to come out, they escaped, and now, you know, we have to deal with them. We have to deal with them. But this is the history that we have to look in. We need to look into their ethnology. We need to look into their ethnography, you know, and that is something that we're going to have to do, because what's going on is when we're far too inclusive. We're far too inclusive of outsiding people, because what they're doing here with these particular rats, they're experimenting and they're using that to learn how to do this to us. They're making us die earlier. And that is our problems. And the thing is, we can't ignore this, because what's happening is people are just passing away, and you know, they lie and tell you it's genetic. Oh, it must be your ethnic group is a risk factor. It's something wrong with you. They're basically roundabout. They're basically saying there's something wrong with you. You know, and if you notice how hard they fight you to, if you want to be included into their little systems, if you want to be included in their movies and their little clubs, they don't want you in their stuff. But we're so quick to welcome them into our cultural uh, creations. Rap, we enjoy, our dances, our, these are sacred things, that we came up with. They love to try to cook like us, and then we're right there trying to teach them everything we know about ourselves. We need to learn about them. You need to learn about where these folks come from. We need to learn about their history, okay? And not trying to make them like you, because what they're learning about your stuff for is is not necessarily a good reason. They're trying to appropriate your stuff, and then they want to disappear you from existence and then take over your culture and say it's theirs. How many black river dances have you seen? Have you seen a lot of black river dancers? I mean, but I guarantee you, if we look back into the history, we'll probably see that that's from us as well, the river dance. So, I think this is pretty much what I'm going to say, and that's pretty much it. But we need to get our stuff together. Read that report from Dr. Wesley Muhammad. And I think that's going to conclude today's broadcast.